Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Haunted Dolls and Curses video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one yet again based on one of your new suggestions. This one having to do with yet another artifact, a wood carving in this case, that apparently caused a curse to happen to a church after it was rebuilt. In fact, when I was reading the information on this, it seems like it was almost too good to be true, but seeing everything that happened afterward, especially with how the church was destroyed, but this wood carving essentially stayed intact along with the building that it was in, while the rest of the area was completely just bombed out. It definitely makes your head think whenever it comes to this local legend. But it has to do with this. You're looking at the actual wood carving itself. Has a very distinct name. It's known as the Swansea Devil. So let's go ahead and let's talk about all the fascinating information associated with this apparently cursed object. So here's how it happened. Now, some of this information is apparently disputed, mainly because there's so much anonymous factors associated with it. Even the name of the person that apparently designed this wood carving is still unknown to this day. And so a lot of people still say that this is just something that became more of a tall tale, more of an urban legend than an actual fact. But I'm still just going to present it as is, and then everyone else, as always, decide on their own if this is true or if this was something that, again, was embellished throughout time. But here's essentially what happened. As the story goes, this was at a location called Swansea, and there was at that place a church called St. Mary's Church. This is a really old church. In fact, I was reading somewhere that it dates back, I hope I read this correctly, like it was somewhere around the 1300s to be specific. Can you believe that? That's when the church was originally built. It lasted that entire time period. And then in the late 1890s, it was decided that there was going to be a rebuilding of it. In other words, there was going to be new parts added to it. Probably the older church was going to be upkept as well, make sure that that could last yet another couple of hundred years. And then on top of that, there was going to be a work done by an architect to ensure that everything was done correctly. Now, the way the legend goes, there was two architects that applied to be able to take care of this task. And one of them was a guy by the name of Sir Arthur Blomfield, and the other one was the anonymous person that I was mentioning earlier just a minute ago. And then afterward, this church decided to accept Sir Arthur Blomfield's designs. They decided to accept him as the person to work on the church. This offended that anonymous man. In fact, he took it pretty much to heart. You know how some business people would essentially just say, okay, he got outbid. Maybe his work wasn't up to par. Maybe his experience wasn't something that was essentially favorable for his outcome. And they just move on to the next job. But no, this guy took his rejection really, really hard. In fact, he considered it a slight against him, his talent, and his work. And so, as it turns out, a couple of years later, he still had that grudge in his mind, because across the street on the other side of the church, or at least adjacent to it, there became a row of cottages suddenly available for purchase. And this anonymous person decided to buy that area. And in fact, when he did that, he bought those places. There were some houses that were there. He tore them down, and he ended up building a set of brewery offices, probably first, as a slight jab to the church itself, because what church would want to have, let's say, some breweries across the street from it, right? And so he decided to do that. He erected a big red brick building, no doubt to make it stand out even more. And then he did one more thing when it came to this. He decided, I don't know if he carved this himself or if he had someone else carve it, but he decided to have a carving of this, what you're looking at now, also called Old Nick, also called Satan, placed there on the grounds of the brewery offices, specifically facing the church. In other words, this thing would be basically there looking outward at the church 24 hours a day, as long as the church and the brewery offices with the window, in other words, were facing outwards towards that area. And so when that happened, this man decided to finalize something bad. He wanted to make sure that he could take all those years of grudges, and the bad temperament that he had, he wanted to essentially place it into one final curse. And he said, pointing directly to the church, he said, when your church is destroyed and burnt to the ground, my devil will remain laughing, i.e., pointing to the wood carving that he had there with him. And so he had that wood carving standing there pretty much as is until, lo and behold, the curse became true. As it turns out, in World War II, that area in Swansea was hit very, very hard. February 1941, over 3 nights, it was known as the Swansea 3-night Blitz. That's when it was just bombarded with complete aerial bombs. I've seen the footage of those type of bombs during World War II. It's just pretty much carpet bombing at that point. No consideration as to what's being hit. It's almost just anonymous when it comes to these things just landing on the ground. You could be at the right spot the whole time, or you could just suddenly be at the wrong one. And the way the story goes, this set of bombing happening over 3 nights eventually hit the majority of that town, of that area, especially the church itself. St. Mary's Church was hit. It was obliterated. It was just completely destroyed, including the area surrounding it. But for one thing, the actual brewery, the one housing this Old Nick, this Swansea Devil, was not only not hit, but it was in perfect condition. It was in such a condition that it was almost as if like it was protected of something. In other words, making sure that nothing in terms of any harm or damage would occur to that particular building. And as it turns out too, there he was, once the rubble was cleared in the surrounding area, there he was, the Swansea Devil, Old Nick, laughing over the church in his eternal laugh, in his eternal glare at what happened to the church and the remains of the church after that 3-night bombing. So that's why the curse is tied to this particular statue, because it became true. Lots of people that heard about it, especially what happened between that anonymous architect and then also as far as his purchasing of that land and then of course this statue, they saw as that curse becoming fact. And so that's why that local legend has grown in popularity and stays there to this very day. If you're wondering like what happened to this devil himself now that the task was done, it later actually this brewery, these offices, either they were sold over or who knows what happened to that anonymous person. But either way, though, those offices were torn down. There was another set of shopping centers that were built there. This devil ended up just being almost thrown away just to leave as is in a garage somewhere in Gloucester. Who knows who was able to obtain it then, but whoever did just decided to place it in the middle of nowhere, just in some garage in the darkness, just leaving it to gather dust until finally somebody found out about that local legend, and it looked like they wanted to seek that specific devil. And when they found that devil, they took it back to the shopping center. But at the same time, that church across the street, St. Mary's Church, was also rebuilt. So, like, in other words, it was built from scratch yet again. This offended the churchgoers. They didn't want to have anything else to do with the Swansea Devil, with Old Nick, especially because of the bad luck, the curse that's associated with him. And so when that happened, eventually the statue itself was placed in one more area and then finally switched to another location where it remains to this day. In fact, it just happened in 2019, so only about 2 years ago. It was donated to the Swansea Museum, and people can go see it to this very day. In fact, you've seen some of the pictures of its current location. It looks very creepy, doesn't it? It looks like it's, especially if you happen to catch the eyes in the right angle, it looks like there it is watching over you and looking through you, in other words, almost as if it truly is an inanimate object. And when that happens, you almost get that shivers, that kind of eerie sensation from it. You wonder if there truly is something behind this thing in terms of its curse. But as of yet, even though it's changed locations and moved to another area, no other bad set of news has impacted that spot, because it looks like, to all intents and purposes, the curse was fulfilled. Whoever that anonymous person was asked this devil to be able to do what it did. And when that happened, then there hasn't been anything else afterward. But if anybody has any more info, anything else I might have missed, then please post those comments below. If I was there in that Swansea area, I would absolutely love to go see this thing at that museum. You always wonder, you know, if it truly is cursed, if there truly is something maleficent, something that was malicious, in other words, behind this thing. And so I would love to be able to go see it, take pictures, probably spend a few moments trying to record like EVPs, anything like that. So if anyone has had a chance to do so, then please post those comments below, or if anyone knows more info on the local side as far as this legend, as far as this curse that placed on there, I would love to hear it too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.